Welcome to the Orioles Roundtable Draft Discussion. I'm Ben McDonald. I was drafted way back in 1989, the first overall pick out of LSU.
I'm Brian Roberts, and I was drafted in 1999 out of the University of South Carolina as the 50th pick in that draft.
What's up, guys? Kyle Stowers here. Was drafted last year in 2019 out of Stanford as the 71st pick.
Hey, Grayson Rodriguez here. I was drafted in 2018, the 11th overall selection out of Central Heights High School in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Mike Bordick, and I didn't get drafted. 1986, at the University of Maine, I went down to Cape Cod and actually signed as a free agent to get my opportunity. A couple days later, I was wearing an Oakland A's uniform.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Adley Rutschman. I was drafted in 2019 with the first overall pick out of Oregon State.
Got a lot of people on board. It's going to be an exciting discussion, too. But I'm going to kick it off. And with the draft coming up just tomorrow, the 2020 draft, I want to start with Adley Rutschman and ask him a draft question. Adley, you, of course, were projected to be the number one pick as soon as the 18 draft ended. You were going to be the first pick in the country. You had to live through that your entire junior season in college. Tell me about that day, that experience leading up to it, and what it felt like really to finally get it all over with.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just going into that season with the expectation of being the number one guy in the draft, I think, my focus had to shift onto the team and just trying to have a good season and be a leader on that team. And I think that, for me, carried me into that draft and allowed me to just, divert my focus into, other places besides just focusing on being a prospect for the draft. I think, the advice I got from a lot of guys going in was just to enjoy the experience and enjoy the ride because it only happens once. And I think I tried to do that as much as I could. And I think, going into that draft day, having my family and friends around me, it really just helped put me at ease for the rest of the day. And I got to enjoy it. And, that's, to me, was the most special memory for me, is just reliving those emotions, over and over, and just, smile on everyone's face when it happened. So that's kind of how it went for me, and I was able to enjoy it.
Well, it's always obviously a very unique situation when you're the number one overall pick. But Kyle, I want to ask you a question. Your draft story was a little bit different than a lot of people's. You weren't surrounded by your family. You didn't get to go out and play golf all day or whatever. Tell us a little bit about your draft day experience and how unique it was for you.
Yeah, I was getting ready for a regional championship game. So I think in the morning, briefly met with my parents, and one of my brothers was there, and then we talked to my agent a little bit about the possibility of getting picked that day. But then from then on, it was just getting ready to play. And it wasn't really like maybe during BP a little bit, like what I was, thinking about it a little bit and, wondering, because I didn't know the pace of the draft and how fast the picks were going. So I was, hoping to find out before the game. But once game time hit, it was easy to lock in. And I actually found out when I was on deck for an at bat in like the fifth or sixth inning. So,
who told you when you were on deck?
It was Coach Esker, our head coach at Stanford. They just had a pitching change, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and he goes, "Hey, it's over. 71st pick to the Orioles." And then all my teammates start coming out of the dugout, giving me hugs, and got a standing ovation, which was pretty cool. Definitely not like your typical, with your families hearing your name announced story, but I wouldn't trade it. It was an unforgettable day, and we won the game, so definitely an all-time day for me.
Great focus right there. Hey, Mike Bordick here, and I got a question for Grayson, actually, Rodriguez. We talked to a couple college guys now that have had great experiences, but what about getting drafted out of high school, right? You have an awesome opportunity to go to college and play. Grayson was going to go to Texas A&M, and fortunately, I guess for the Orioles, he signed number one pick. So 11th overall. If Grayson's on, man, I'd love to hear that story because there are a lot of decisions to be made.
That week leading up to the draft, we thought about it a lot, prayed about it a lot, and I really wanted to go to Texas A&M. And, obviously getting picked in the first round, you can't turn that down. And, we were sitting out on the back porch, a couple of close friends of my family, and we were watching it on TV when it happened.
That's cool, man. I tell you, it's to make that transition, Grayson, is big from going from high school to college. But I'm going to roll back over to Kyle and ask him a question too. I mean, Kyle, what would you tell – I know that, all you guys, and of course, Grayson did go out of high school. Of course, Kyle and Adley both had an opportunity to go out of high school and chose to go to college. Kyle, what do you think about – what would you tell kids that are in high school that have an opportunity to do either or? You can get drafted out of high school and go, or you can go and enjoy the college experience as well. But Kyle, what shot you to college more than anything? I know you went to Stanford, obviously, and that's a high education school, big time program, big time conference to play college baseball. But do you regret that decision at all? And how was your college experience playing at Stanford?
I don't regret it. But I think the best advice that was given to me was from Dave Stewart, who is in the agency that I'm with. I played for him growing up, and so he's always been a major mentor of mine. He put it pretty simply, and it was, if you're ready to play now, go play. And if you're not, then don't play now. So although Stanford, obviously played a little bit of a role in it, my decision to go to Stanford was still always a baseball decision, and I felt like I could get to where I wanted to be through Stanford, and I did. So for me, it was still a baseball decision, and I just felt that I wasn't ready to play professional baseball out of high school, and I'm glad I didn't, because having that first year away from home in college was pretty difficult, and I couldn't have imagined doing that in professional baseball as an 18-year-old. So obviously, props to Grayson, to the guys that are ready, because some people are ready, but I just was not out of high school.
Yeah, good answer. And when Stewart says ready, I'm assuming you mean ready to really be away from home, ready to really play every day, being mature enough to accept those responsibilities, having a little jingle in your pocket and being out on your own for the first time. And I think a lot of kids, in some ways that scares a lot of kids and kind of moves them towards that college experience where you have an opportunity to actually mature, grow up a little bit, and of course begin to get your education as well. Yeah,
and to be fair, I can only speak obviously from my experience, and I'd like to believe that if I would have went out of high school, that I would have, it would have worked out, and that should be going well. But I just know my experience, and that it did work out for me how it's gone so far.
Well, Adley, I'm gonna shoot a question back at you. Look, there's not a lot of people in this world that can relate to being 1-1 in the Major League Baseball draft. There's another guy on this call that can relate. Big Ben over there. He's one of the very few. But can you tell me what this past year has been like for you? Going from being obviously the man in college and knowing that the draft is coming up, but then all of a sudden you get to experience what your dreams were, right? To be a professional baseball player. Can you tell me how being a professional baseball player now, doing this as a living has changed your life in some ways? And as well, what were the things that caught you by surprise, and then what were the things that you felt like you were really prepared for coming out of college and as you headed into pro ball?
I think like Kyle said earlier, same thing for me. I wasn't ready out of high school to go. Just from like a mental perspective, I wasn't ready to be out on my own. And so going to college, the mental development that went along with that was the biggest thing that helped me out. And I think by the time pro ball did hit, I was ready to take on that challenge of being alone and going through the grind per se of minor league baseball. And I think that's the biggest change going from college to minor league ball, is that now it is your job, and there's no longer school to deal with. Your only job is to be ready for every single day that you show up to the field. I think for guys who are coming in for their first year, looking back on it, for me, just trying to find something to occupy your time after the game, before the game, whatever it is during that day, that's going to get you mentally prepared to play every single day, for months straight, I think is the biggest thing. Everyone's got to kind of come into their own and find their own niche of what's going to occupy that time, because baseball does take up a lot of the day, but There's also, that time in college that was filled by school, was filled by, living with your friends and stuff. And so I think just being able to find that time is the biggest change for me. And it helps having, new friends on the team, but coming in, I know I didn't know a lot of guys coming in. So once I got to Aberdeen, it was a little easier because I knew Kyle a little bit. And then, moving up to Delmarva, had to make, completely new friends. So that was the biggest adjustment for me.
So to follow up a little bit on that, what did you find that worked for you? Or are you still trying to find, obviously, what works for you, which I know you are because you're still young. It took me a long time to figure out what worked for me on a daily basis. But did you figure some things out over the course of this first season on how to spend that time and prepare every day?
So I think I'm still working on that. Chris Stewart was a guy who my dad coached growing up, and he was basically a guy between AAA and the major leagues throughout his whole career. And he was kind of the guy who taught me that and said, you got to find your own thing. And so that's really what I was looking for. And I think I'm still trying to find that, but I know for sure that once you start to develop friendships on the team, that it becomes a lot easier no matter what you're doing because you have those connections. But, coming in when you don't have those connections, it's definitely harder to adapt because you do feel like you're on your own in that first part.
Hey, you guys were all top picks. I mean, everybody on this panel, number one picks, right? I was undrafted, and there were pressures on me being undrafted. Well, you guys were touted as number one picks. Best in the country, best in the world, really. And you had to find a way to not just live on that ego, but to find a way to live up to that number one kind of expectation. So if anybody could really talk about that.
I mean, you just got to go out and play baseball like you know how to play. I guess when I was drafted by the Orioles, I was kind of thinking I was going to go later in the first round. So I know some people were kind of upset with my pick, taking a high school guy, but just trying to go out and prove a lot of people wrong because there's a lot of haters out there. And, whenever you step on the mound, you just got to go out and dominate.
Yeah. I think for me, that's also the tough part of the draft is, part of a scout's job too, is finding guys who, when you're given that number, that top round pick, is that going to be enough for those guys? Is that going to be satisfactory? And I think that's the tough part of a scout's job, is finding out the guys who, the reason why they play the game. Is it because they love it? Is it because they enjoy it? Is it because they want to make it to the major leagues and have an impact, and use that platform for something good? Or is it just to get money in your pocket and then you be satisfied at that point? And so I think that's the tough part. And I've been fortunate enough to be around the guys here, and I can tell you that their motivation is just for their love of the game and because they enjoy doing it. And I think that they're not going to be satisfied until they get to that top spot in the major leagues. And so to me, that's like the exciting part, is finding guys who genuinely enjoy the game of baseball and enjoy coming out every single day to the yard and trying to be the best they can, because the expectation isn't what drives you. It's mostly just, where that motivation comes from. And for a lot of these guys, it's because they want to, be the best they can be. And, their desire every day is to do everything they can, work as hard as they can in order to, to be the best version of themselves.
I think the nice thing about baseball, and also, that's different from other sports, is obviously when you get drafted in other sports, you usually go right into the, right on the TV, into the big time. In baseball, you go obviously into the system and you start from the bottom again. And I think the nice thing about that is you still have plenty of guys above you that you're trying to chase, and I think that kind of serves, for everyone as a way to have a chip on your shoulder or whatever, because you haven't made it yet, and then that's the thing I think every agent preaches to their guys, is that the draft is only but a checkpoint, so.
Yeah, no, I agree with all three of those. It's about staying hungry, because you guys know, you think you're pretty good in high school, right? We all did. And then you get to college and you realize, well, I'm still pretty good, but there's a lot of good players. And then you get to pro ball. And I know Grayson, of course, went right out of high school, but then you start to see what's in the minor leagues of certain organizations. You go, wow, everybody is very talented. So what's going to separate me at the end of the day? How am I going to climb that ladder and ultimately achieve the ultimate goal that I set? And that's to play in the big leagues and play for a while. So it's tough for everybody. But let me ask all three of y'all. I like all three of y'all to individually ask this question. We know the Orioles are in the middle of a rebuild, obviously, starting over. You guys are kind of the cornerstones and the building blocks of hopefully what's to come. You talk about, Grayson was a high pick. DL Hall, who's not with us, obviously was a high pick. Adley was the first pick. Kyle, you were a second-round pick. So all y'all are expected, and there, to me, is some pressure there. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but do you guys feel any extra pressure knowing where the Orioles are right now and where the Orioles want to be, say, in 3 or 4 years now, to really be the building blocks of what's to come? And that's being competitive again every day at the big league level and hopefully competing, in the American League to win titles.
Speaking for myself, and I think all these guys would say it's exciting, just because if we have the opportunity to help turn something around, then like sign us up for that. Like that's that I think that's pretty special to get the chance to do that. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows that they have a chance to do something great. This year a lot of the pitchers, really stepped up. We had a lot of great dudes. We had some dudes leave us in Delmarva, go up to Frederick and end up in Bowie. And, that staff we had down there, a lot of those guys, really just took off, I guess. It was kind of unexpected from some guys. And, everybody was able to just feed off each other. And I think it's definitely a great atmosphere what we have right now in the minor leagues. And, there's a lot of guys ready to step up for the task.
Yeah, absolutely. I think expectation, can breed a lot of pressure if you don't look at it as an opportunity. But I think a lot of the guys right now are looking at it as an opportunity, and I think people are excited about it, and that's the biggest thing. And I completely agree with Kyle and Grayson. It's an exciting time, and I think just to be a part of a unique opportunity like this is even better.
Yeah, Grayson, I want to ask you a question. You kind of mentioned earlier that some people may have been disappointed. You thought about where you were drafted and that you thought you were going to go later in the first round, possibly. As we kind of look to the draft coming up, can you give us a kind of a picture into the mind of what these kids are going through? I remember the day before the draft or the week before the draft for myself, it was all over the map. Like, would you sign in this round? Would you sign in this round? And you never know what to expect. But for the guys that are going through that right now, give us a little insight into what they're going through in their mind right now.
Yeah, the draft is crazy. I know for me it was, that week leading up to it, it was pretty nerve-wracking. A lot of sleepless nights, I guess you could say. But, and you just don't know. Anything can happen in the draft. Like I didn't even know I was getting picked by the Orioles until we saw it on TV. No phone call or anything. And so, expecting to go into the end of the first round, it just leaves the table wide open for guys. One pick it sets off a chain reaction, and a lot of different situations can happen. And, I would just tell guys just to, be ready that, anything could happen.
You guys, at what point in your lives, and this goes way back, it might even be before high school, did you always want to be major league players? I know I wanted to be the quarterback for the Jets when I was under 9 years old, and then all of a sudden, I kept playing baseball and football. Baseball that ended up working out, I didn't grow at all. So the quarterback stuff in the NFL was, that was just a pipe dream. But the reality was I was still a pretty good athlete, but I liked baseball. But when I was younger, and even in high school, I don't know, maybe I was just naive. I didn't have any expectations about getting drafted. I wanted to just keep playing sports as long as I could. An opportunity came up in college for me. What was that timetable for you guys?
I think for me, it started back in T-ball, playing baseball. Soccer was the first sport that I ever played, and that was the first sport I quit. And I knew I wasn't going to be a soccer player. So, playing baseball ever since T-ball at an early age, you watch it on TV and you see those big leaguers, and it's what you want to dream of. And the older you get, you see that can become more of a reality. And, you really put your head towards it and start working on it, and you can achieve your goal.
I had a similar thing when I was younger. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. Baseball was always my passion. But I remember, I think it was in middle school and like early high school, it's like someone showed me the stats of like how many high school players end up playing college ball versus like minor league baseball and then in the major leagues. And it was just like this tiny percentage. And I was like, shoot, like I had this moment of like, am I good enough to play? I don't think I'm good enough to play. Like, am I even going to be able to play college ball? And then it was like later in high school, I finally signed with Oregon State, and I kind of got that dream started to, build up again in my mind. And I was like, I can do this, and then I started really pushing for that. But I remember there was that time in the middle where I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I kept pushing and, worked out. So.
Yeah, I think for me, somewhat similar to Adley. Like growing up, for me, it was always baseball, with a little bit of other sports too, until about 8th grade, where I actually quit baseball for about a year to focus on basketball. And then it kind of got back into baseball freshman year of high school, and then from there it was back on just trying to take that as far as I can. I always knew that it was going to be baseball. Wasn't tall enough to play basketball. So for me, I always kind of had that, at least in all of high school, that idea that I was going to play this for as long as I could.
I hear all you guys saying that you all played, and that's always a big discussion, not to get off topic, but how important do you think, I always thought, and Bordy touched on it as well, I know B-Rob did too, but we all played a lot of sports growing up, especially young, and I felt like basketball, being long and tall, helped with my footwork, agility. I heard Grayson mention soccer. I'm sure that helps with footwork. But how important, if you had advice for, and that's always a topic when you're talking about young kids now about, well, I just want to be a baseball player. I'm only going to play baseball. To me, it's important to be athletic. How important do you think it is, while you're in junior high and grade school coming up, and even in high school, to play multiple sports to help you out with your athleticism?
For me, I think kids should play as many sports as they can for however long they can, because at some point you're going to have to, hopefully you get the opportunity to have to choose one. And I think what I loved about playing basketball was that it kind of gave me a break from baseball and kept that fire for baseball going. So I think especially at a younger age, like, if you play one sport too long, you see a lot of kids get burnt out. So, and then along with the benefits for just general athleticism.
I think that's good. I always tell people whenever they ask that, never allow, one sport to get in the way of the other. Like if you want to play multiple sports, that's probably going to be better for you in the long run. And I know scouts and stuff, they look for guys who are athletic and guys who are versatile. And like Kyle said, eventually you might have the opportunity to, just choose one. But until that time, like I would have gotten burnt out if I had only done baseball from a young age. So I'm really happy I did. And I think it does help with that athleticism. And the more you can do, I think that is appealing to more like college coaches and, scouts. Like they want to see you doing multiple things. If you got the athleticism, you got the swing, like people are they'll understand that. And, it does fuel that fire for baseball.
I always played basketball up until high school. And then my freshman year of high school, I really started focusing on baseball. And, I did track and field, basketball, and a few other sports growing up. And, you can see a lot, and you learn some skills from those other sports that you can put into your baseball game.
Well, as we come up on the draft tomorrow, how hard do you think it's been for this draft class going through what we were going through as a country, as a nation, through this pandemic, not being able to play? How difficult would that have been for you guys? Certainly Grayson as a high school kid not being able to play, but then in college not being able to have your final college season. Kyle, I think you're a guy who probably kind of climbed the ladder in the draft your junior year, where maybe you might not have gone quite as high. Do you think there's going to be some real sleepers in this draft who people didn't get to see play their junior year and may get drafted lower and then take off once they get into the minor leagues?
Absolutely. I'm sure for both these other guys along with me, talking to their teammates and friends, just how much uncertainty there is added on top of what is already a pretty crazy process. Couldn't even imagine, especially, I know that they've been talking about shortening the draft for a little bit. But there was early on, it was whether it was going to be 5 rounds, 10 rounds, 20. It just really feel for the guys that were kind of in that, for that second day range where they still probably don't know what's going to happen. And then also, on the flip side, maybe opening up doors for guys that who can sign as free agents that maybe not would have gotten that chance. So I think there's definitely it's a double-edged sword, but I honestly couldn't imagine not having your final junior year, senior year of college, or even your senior year of high school. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact I wouldn't have been drafted where I was at if it wasn't for my senior year of high school. My junior year, I was throwing about 92, 93, and then my senior spring came out throwing up to 98. And, it was just a complete 180. Going into my senior year, I was kind of, some scouts had said, well, we think we might go about the 4th or the 5th round. And if it wasn't for my senior year of high school, I wouldn't even been close to sniffing the first round. And I was kind of viewed as that pop-up guy or that that late riser, and shoved my way up in there. And it definitely I'd be at college right now if this were to happen when I was in high school. So very, very fortunate that it didn't happen.
Adley would have gone first overall still.
Yeah.
Bordy still would have been undrafted, so it wouldn't matter, right?
What about your guys' draft experiences? You tell us all about that a little bit?
Yeah, I want to hear Ben. Ben, give me your draft day experience.
Well, we were, as you guys know, the draft has moved around over the years. And of course, in 1989, the draft was at Omaha, and or actually during Omaha, I should say. And so LSU happened to make it to Omaha. I happened to be pitching the same night as the draft. And so it was really screwy because the draft went off at like noon, and I was taking the mound at like 4 o'clock that afternoon. So I had to go to an hour-long press conference at noon that day, and then rush straight to the field and try to mentally prepare to pitch a game in Omaha, game 1 in Omaha. So it was a difficult time for me, as you know, Adley. You can relate. I was very similar to you, expected to be the number 1 pick, and I'm glad that I heard you say you enjoyed your draft experience. You enjoyed your junior year. For me, it was not a whole lot of fun. I enjoyed it, but when you have to live up to the questions every game you start about being the number 1 pick, and I remember I had some great games where you give up 2 runs and you punch out 13, and some guy goes, "Yeah, but you're supposed to be the number 1 pick in the country. You're not supposed to give up 2 runs in college," And so I didn't always enjoy my junior year because I let the expectations of what other people were saying, what I should be doing on the field, kind of affect me, and it did also at the big league level. And I know you can, and you're going to relate to that because I went, I signed August the 19th that year. I was finally signed. And then I was September the 1st, 11 days later, I was in the big leagues at 21 years old. And so there was a lot of adjustments for me, and again, my first couple of years at the big league level, tried to listen to what people were saying, unfortunately. And I let that get caught up in my progression, my maturing process, trying to live up to everybody else's expectations. And it wasn't finally until I realized, hey, only thing I can control is what I can control. And I know all you guys can relate to this. We work hard, we go out, we do our stuff every day. But at the end of the day, you got to try to be satisfied at times with what you do and how you go about your work. And I heard you guys say, you're trying to figure out what I need to do every day to be the best ball player. And that was me learning at the big league level. But it's awfully tough to learn at the big league level because there's a lot of ups and downs, as you guys know. And so it was difficult, but still, it was more for me a relief, like I'm sure it was for you, to finally get it over with. And because at the end of the day, we're just ball players, right? We like the draft, but we just want to go play baseball. And that's kind of how I was too.
I guess, interestingly enough, my dad was coaching University of North Carolina. He was the head coach at Carolina at that point. And in 1989, my dad's team made the College World Series. So I was there actually watching Big Ben, years old. That was my first glimpse of just sheer greatness in person. But no, my draft experience was great. I mean, it certainly had its stressors, as Grayson talked about, and I had I had played my first 2 years at UNC in North Carolina, and then I transferred to the University of South Carolina for my junior year, actually. And so it was kind of a whirlwind, to be honest. I had no idea, kind of like Grayson, where I was going to get drafted. You know, I had heard somewhere in the first round, and then before the draft, I had people ask me if I had signed in the 10th round. And you're like, no idea what's going to happen. Ended up being the 50th pick overall. And that year, the Orioles, we had 7 picks in the first 50 in 1999. So 7 of the first 50 were Orioles drafts. And so I was fortunate to come into a situation a little bit like you guys, where they were rebuilding. We were rebuilding. And I got to come up with a lot of guys in the same situation. So for me, I was, I guess, considered a first rounder, kind of like Kyle, you know, like a competitive balance supplemental pick. Maybe I didn't have quite as much pressure as the guys that were ahead of me, because I kind of flew under the radar a little bit as the last of those 7 picks in the top 50. But it was a great experience. And I think, as most of you guys know from this first year, it was, even when you play in big time college baseball or in high school, you know, big tournaments like they have nowadays, it's so different when you get into that first season of pro ball. The daily aspect of playing, trying to figure out your routine, trying to understand how you're going to succeed on a daily basis as a position player, how you're going to hit on a daily basis, and that sort of thing. So the draft day was fun. I went out and played golf that morning with my buddies. And, you know, it's not exactly like last year when I was sitting in New York and Adley, I got a piece of paper I got to look at before they called your name. You know, on TV back in the day, my parents were trying to get the dial-up internet to work. I was going to get drafted, which was high tech compared to, you know, Bordy and Ben getting theirs via telegram or whatever. However,
it was Morse code for Bordy.
No, but it was a great experience for sure. You know, well, as you guys know, and as we know, we all look back on that day already. For you guys, just 1 year later, and for us, a long time later, as one of the greatest days of our lives.
It wasn't very great for me. I didn't get drafted, so how can that be good? And I'm still holding a grudge against the draft, because I just feel like I was underevaluated the whole freaking time through my college career. I had a strong junior season, man. We just got back from Omaha, too, in 1986. And unfortunately, the Maine Black Bears, we played, too, and barbecued. So we were home before the draft actually happened, right? And I did take a step back, and I said, well, maybe I'm not that good. But, you know, I was fortunate enough to have another opportunity. And I think that's what baseball players get. They get windows of opportunities, and if you're prepared for them, good things potentially are going to happen. I think that's what we all ask for as baseball players, just opportunities. And when you go about it the right way, good things are going to happen. And I know great things are going to happen for all of you. I've seen you work, and I know you're passionate about the game. So I'm excited to follow your careers for sure.
Absolutely. Let me ask you guys, you know, with everything going on, all three of y'all can answer this. I know it's been a challenge for everybody to try to stay in shape, not knowing when and if the season was going to start, especially the minor league season. Who knows what's going to happen with that? And, you know, I was on the Zoom call with Mike Elias yesterday, and he alluded to the fact that he was asked a question about the minor league season, and he was honest. He said, I just don't know if it's going to happen or not. Now, we all hope you guys get some reps maybe in, you know, not winter ball, but maybe an extended spring or a structural league, or maybe even the Arizona Fall League. There's talk that they're going to expand that. But how big a challenge has it been for everybody, both mentally, not knowing what's going to happen, but also physically trying to stay in shape? Everything's been quarantined there for a while. It was difficult to find a place to work out. How have you all been able to try to stay in shape? What's been the biggest challenges on that end?
I think it's really tough from a hitter's perspective, is your best gauge for where you're at as a hitter is live at bats. And those have been obviously, you know, tough to come by. And I think lately there's been more opportunities coming up of getting a chance to do that. But for me, I thankfully have a cage at my house. So my brother will come throw to me a few times a week. And but other than that, it's usually just the tee work. But it's tough to, like, you can feel good, you know, hitting a BP fastball, but then you get in the live at bat, and it's a whole different ball game. So I'd say that's probably the toughest part during all this.
luckily about 3 weeks ago, Texas opened back up, and we weren't under lockdown anymore. So my training facility opened back up, and I was able to go see a bunch of my buddies, a bunch of minor league guys and big league guys, get to throw with them every day and, train with them. And being a pitcher, it's a little bit easier, all you need is a catcher. That's definitely a little bit easier, being able to get out and throw and, do whatever. So
I know for me, the biggest thing at the beginning of quarantine was trying to find a weight room to work out in and stay strong. And fortunately enough, one of the high schools around my area, they were remodeling their weight room. So I was able to snag one of the squat racks and grab one of those, some of the equipment and dumbbells and whatnot, to put in my garage. So we basically just moved all the cars out and put full weight room in there. And but I think the live ABs, that's the toughest part, is to, like Kyle said, to gauge yourself. And we got some more guys who want to throw right now, and some of the stuff's open back up so we can get on fields and see some more live pitching. But it's just tough, I think, from a mental aspect more than physically, just to not know when that specific date you're supposed to be ready by is, and trying to gauge how you're supposed to work out and stuff according to being ready by a certain date. And staying ready is probably just the toughest part on guys mentally right now, not knowing and just being so eager and hopefully trying to get back as soon as possible. So I know everyone's dealing with it in different ways right now, but just trying to keep as steady of a head as you can right now is very important.
Well, guys, we really want to thank you for joining us today for the roundtable, the draft roundtable. It's been awesome to hear all of you guys' stories and your advice, your wisdom for the guys who are going to get drafted tomorrow. And we hope to certainly see you guys playing again soon. I know everybody in Birdland is excited to see this group begin to make that rise through the minor leagues, and see you in Oriole Park very, very soon. So thanks a lot for joining us, guys. And we'll all be watching that draft tomorrow and see who that number one pick is.